So welcome everyone to our diabetic intensive. And even if you're not diabetic, this class is really about sugar balancing, and it's an informal class, so feel free to ask as many questions as you want during the presentation. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Jyoti Patel. I practice internal medicine, pediatrics, and now integrative medicine. And today's session is a little bit of movement, so we're going to get up in a few moments and do a little mindful movement. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, feel free to stay seated and just imagine you're doing it, okay? But if you feel comfortable doing it, create some space as we have a few people here in the classroom. And if you're at home, feel free to join me in your job. You've made a commitment to come in this evening to learn something new, to help yourself or someone in your family or in your friend circle. Give yourself permission to be here fully and take in everything that is to serve you in the future. I want you to feel your feet on the ground with your eyes closed, and maybe even rock a little forward and backwards on your toes and your heels, safely, of course. And if you don't feel safe, place your hands on the chair or furniture around you so that you can feel safe. I want you to know that change can be difficult, but it's not impossible, okay? So I want you to think about, what is it that you want for your health for? It's not, I want to be healthy. I want you to think, I want to be healthy because I want X. I want to live a long life. I want to be with my family. I want to be independent. I don't want to be reliant on others. I don't want to get sicker. I want to get rid of medications. What do you want your health for? Okay? And then ask yourself, where do you need to start? And we're going to talk a little bit about specifically an integrative approach to controlling your blood sugar today. But every month, the first Wednesday of every month, I plan on having different educational sessions that are completely free for you to learn about how you can take back control of your health. Next month, we're going to do muscle and metabolism. The following, we're going to do mindful muscle relaxation. So feel free to come to these events because they're here for you. What I'm going to teach is integrative medicine. Some people here in the audience might not know what integrative medicine is. It's really blending both traditional medicine, so I'm not just about holistic medicine. I do believe that there's a role for traditional medicine, but we're blending it with nutrition and mind-body methods and exercise, herbs and supplements, vitamins, minerals, and other complementary modalities to treat disease. And so in an integrative model, when I talk to my patients in the clinic, we go over everything, not just the disease itself, but everything that might connect you to that disease. It could be your spiritual health, nutrition, your time in nature, time taking care of your family and yourself, sleep and exercise. So if this is you, or you know somebody that has this problem, we call it insulin resistance, and you suffer from some of these symptoms, you're tired all the time, you're hungry all the time, you have cravings for sugar, you get tired or nappy after a meal, you have aches and pains and inflammation, you tend to have stubborn upper body abdominal fat, you find yourself having other problems like high cholesterol and high triglycerides, other hormonal problems, whether it's estrogen or thyroid, or if you're younger and you've been diagnosed with polycystic ovarian disease, all of these conditions are actually driven by one thing called insulin resistance. So let me ask you this question. What is diabetes? And there's no bad answer here. So go ahead and tell me, what do you think diabetes means? For those of you who may have it or know somebody who has it, what is diabetes?
Where your body can't regulate the sugar.
Can't regulate blood sugar. Yeah, yeah. And that's exactly right. But most people feel, and this is what I get a lot of, is that it's a sugar problem. Too much sugar, that's what diabetes is. And it's actually not that. So let me give you an analogy, because I love analogies. Okay, I do, right? So your body is like a high rise, okay? And your cells are like individual condo units, that each condo has a door and a lock and key, okay? In the same way, your body is made up of lots of cells with individual locks that are only opened by a key called insulin. Now, in some people, especially young children, early on if they get type 1 diabetes, something causes injury, their immune system causes injury to their pancreas, and they stop making keys, they stop making insulin. So what happens is they don't have the key to open the lock to allow sugar into the cells, okay? So imagine that these condos order DoorDash. How many of you have DoorDashed in the last 2 years? You know what that is? It's where you call into a restaurant and they deliver the food to your door, right? So imagine you're ordering, takeout, but you can't open the door to get the food, okay? In the same way, diabetic patients have lots of sugar that ends up in their bloodstream, but they don't have the key to open the lock to the cell. So the cell is starving, the food is outside, but they can't get the sugar inside the cell. The problem isn't the sugar. The problem is that the lock and key doesn't work to allow the sugar to come inside the cell. Do you guys understand that? Is that a good analogy to kind of think about why diabetes happens? People blame sugar as the problem, but it's not. It's the lock and key that's not working. So let me talk you through why the key doesn't work, okay? So number one, you may have a genetic predisposition. You inherited it from your parents, right? That the quality of the keys that you're making diminishes over time, and now you have a little bit of issues with sensitivity. Your lock and key doesn't work very well. So you may have inherited a tendency. But just inheriting a tendency doesn't cause diabetes. Your environment, we call this epigenetics, puts you into that state where it gets worse. And because the lock and key doesn't work, the body compensates by making more and more keys. So your fasting insulin level keeps going up and up and up. A lot of people never check their insulin levels to see if that's what's going on. But in type 2 diabetes, the body will continue to compensate by increasing your endogenous insulin production, okay? Because it's trying to compensate for the keys not working. Now, other reasons why the key's not working. Toxins in the environment. Most doctors and medical clinics never talk about this. But we know in science that environmental toxins can also affect insulin sensitivity. Glyphosate, Roundup, pesticides, dioxins, POPs. When we get all these chemicals into our food, water, and air, it can actually cause impairment of that lock key mechanism, okay? The second reason, the lock needs specific nutrients for it to work properly. Another thing that's never talked about is zinc, magnesium, selenium, nutrients. And so when people come in, a lot of times they're deficient in these minerals and these nutrients, and that lock and key mechanism isn't working properly for them. So their body keeps compensating by making more insulin, and the sugar is piling up outside the condo unit. Now you say, well, why do they say it's a sugar problem? Why do we worry about sugar? Because all that DoorDash food that's sitting outside the cell, it starts to rot and it starts to corrupt. So that excessive sugar in the bloodstream starts to cause inflammation in the blood vessels, can cause coronary artery disease, can cause damage to brain cells, can cause kidney damage, can cause nerve damage, right? So we don't want all that sugar piling up in the bloodstream. So we do, as doctors, ask you to monitor your blood sugar because we really need to get that sugar out of the bloodstream. Now, here's another reason why you have insulin resistance. When you have a lot of sugar in your bloodstream and the body can't do anything with it, where does it go? It goes into the liver, and the liver converts it to fat. All right? So then what happens? Yes, our belly fat. So a lot of patients will start coming in and they'll say, I've got this stubborn belly fat. And what happens with that sugar, it gets into the liver and the liver stores it as fat for a rainy day. Now, what happens there is that increasing abdominal fat is actually inflammatory, and it secretes hormones, dysregulates appetite. So you feel hungry all the time, you're craving sugar all the time, and it's making the problem worse, okay? So that increasing abdominal fat is not just inert, it's actually secreting hormones like adenopectin and leptin, and it's affecting ghrelin. And so as that abdominal fat increases, your ability to control your appetite continuously declines. And so now you've got this vicious cycle of then craving more sugar. That excessive sugar has nowhere to go, so it goes to the liver and it gets converted to belly fat. Doesn't that sound horrible? Yeah. But I want to explain that to you guys because it's so important, because we're going to talk about how to solve that problem too, okay? So the excessive belly fat causes dysregulation of appetite and sugar balance and insulin sensitivities. So that causes a further aggravation of this insulin resistance problem. So I get a lot of people that will say, I don't know, I wake up with really high blood sugars, but I go to bed with really normal blood sugars. What the heck is happening? And I'm like, something is causing your body to stress through the night. Your body is then compensating by dumping sugar into your bloodstream, and that's why you're waking up with high numbers, okay? And then what's the solution? Working on that nighttime stress. Sometimes that has to do with poor sleep quality, that has to do with that monkey mind, that has to do with a day long of having to put out fires. That stressor causes cortisol levels to stay elevated, and high stress cortisol causes you to then produce more sugar, dump more sugar, and then guess what? Insulin counts go up, okay? The problem with having high insulin is insulin and cortisol are both going to drive up your hunger, your cravings, and it's going to cause you to gain weight. Both insulin and cortisol are growth hormones, so it increases growth in the cells. So having high stress states and high insulin states puts on more weight, which then causes a more vicious cycle of inflammation in the body, which then continuously causes our blood sugar to rise. So when patients come in and they say, I'm controlling sugar to the 10th power, right? I'm writing everything down, I'm making sure I'm not eating any sugar. Why am I still having problems with my blood sugar? I explain that it's not just about your consumption of sugar, it's all these other factors that might be affecting your ability to take that sugar and put it into the cells, or your body is getting signals that you are stressed and that you need to dump more sugar into your bloodstream. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. Do they tell you that when you come in for your blood sugar issues? No, right? But it's so important that when you know that sugar is a byproduct of the problem, the issue is the lock and the key, okay? So the reason why I talk about blood sugar, because it is the #1 health problem in the United States, okay? In the next 4 years, every 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with diabetes, right? It's going to suck up a big chunk of all medical spending in the United States. It's such an important issue that I felt very passionate about bringing information on how we can resolve it in our own lives and the people that you know. So the things that I always talk about is, how do you know that you have a problem with insulin resistance? Well, you might have symptoms. You might be tired all the time, hungry all the time, thirsty all the time, peeing all the time. You might be actually losing muscle, and that can also be a problem. You could have muscle cramps, especially when you try to exercise, because the sugar is not getting into the muscle cells, and so it can cause a lot of cramping. You could be peeing all the time, feel dehydrated all the time. So you might want to go and see your doctor, okay? And what tests are you going to ask for? Okay, so you're going to get a hemoglobin A1c. So your doctor may order a fasting blood sugar, okay? So that's an overnight fast of 12 hours or more. You may have a glucometer at home, something that you prick your own finger with and check your own blood sugar if you're curious. You can buy that at the pharmacy with a few strips. Check your blood sugar, okay? What should it be if you're fasting and you're not diabetic? Under 100, right? And so that's normal. What's ideal? Around 80, okay? 60 to 80. But that's hard for a lot of people. So I say, you know, if you're a rock star, you're 80. If you're doing good, you're under 100, okay? If you're over 100, but under 125, you're getting a B- from me, okay? And if you're over 125 fasting, that means that now that sugar is causing some toxicity to your system, and we need to work on getting that under that, okay? All right, so there is another way of checking your blood sugar. 2 hours after you eat, okay? So 2 hours after you eat, if you're not diabetic, your blood sugar should be less than 150. Okay? If you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, you might find that after 2 hours after you've eaten, you're still running 150 plus. Okay, if you're over 200, again, that's a little too high after 2 hours of eating. So a quick way to do that is just to check it and see, what did you eat? Was there too many carbohydrates and sugar that your body couldn't move it into the cells? And then make modifications accordingly, okay? So why do I check my ketones in the morning? If your goal is to lose belly fat and you want to slim down your waistline, you want to tap into those abdominal fat stores, you have to first deplete your carbohydrate stores before your body uses fat for fuel. So I intermittent fast overnight. So I eat at 6 p.m. and I don't eat until probably 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So I check my ketones first thing in the morning. If I'm producing ketones over 0.5, then I know that my fast worked, because now I'm using belly fat to burn, right? I'm making ketones. Ketones are what the body makes when they use fat. If I didn't make ketones the next morning, I'm still tapping into my carbohydrate stores, and I never really tapped into my fat stores. Does anybody have questions about that? Ketones in the morning? Some people ask me what kinds of, how can I measure my ketones?
Is it the ketone sticks that you can buy?
Yes, you can buy urine ketone sticks. You can use like a breathalyzer, which looks like an alcohol one. Or you can get the finger prick one. I have the finger prick one. The reason why is because I check my blood sugar and my ketones at the same time. So I check to see if my blood sugar is in good range when I wake up, and then I check my ketones as well to see if I'm actually tapping into fat stores overnight. If I ate poorly the last day, right, and I didn't exercise enough, then I'm not going to be tapping into my fat stores. And I've done my own experiments of stuff. I found that when I fast and I do a hot yoga workout in the morning, I'm producing ketones. If I was stressed through the night, I didn't sleep very well, not producing ketones. Weird. If I didn't eat enough throughout the day, so I'll tell you a story about what I did. I go next door to do a muscle workout in the evening. I didn't eat a whole lot. I usually find that I'm hypoglycemic around 4 or 5. Does anybody else feel like they just plummet in the late afternoon? Yeah, that was me. And I was curious about that. So I ate a really light lunch, went all afternoon. 5 o'clock I went to the gym and I did a 30-minute weight workout. I knew I was hypoglycemic. I could feel it. I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm burning some ketones now. Weirdly enough, my blood sugar was 66, but no ketones. So I realized with my metabolism, if I starve myself, my body does the opposite of what I want it to do. It actually shuts down my metabolism, okay? So it's counterproductive. Here I am wanting to tap in my fat stores, but starving actually shut my metabolism down and slows your metabolism. Why? Because it's conserving, because it thinks that I'm not gonna find food, and so it needs me to survive. And so it actually does the opposite. It actually causes my body to not use any fat stores in case there's scarcity of food. So the better lesson for me is to eat consistently throughout the day and eat enough protein and fats and eat low glycemic foods so that my body then maintains itself and its metabolic engines are still on. And because I'm not eating a ton of refined carbohydrates and sugar, it will then tap into that fat store. And if I use my muscles enough throughout the day, then it uses up all that stored sugar more readily, and then my body is able to then tap into fat stores. Intermittent fasting is not for everyone, especially if you're dealing with a lot of stress in your life. If you fast that long, it can actually put your body into more stress, right? So gauge that. Like I said, I was doing that during the day and it wasn't productive for me. I was hypoglycemic and definitely probably unhealthy in that point, and I wasn't really burning ketones. So I would say listen to your body intuitively, what works for you. If you have to eat every 2 to 3 hours and that keeps your blood sugars stable, as long as you're not doing this with your blood sugars, So a lot of times what we do is we eat a little carbohydrate that causes our blood sugar and our insulin to spike. Then we get a crash, and then we feel sluggish and slow. And then we eat another spurt of sugar to kind of keep us going that causes a rise in blood sugar and insulin, and then causes us to crash again. So you're doing this yo-yo thing with your insulin and your blood sugar, not good, right? So you want to keep it steady throughout the day, right? So if you have a CGM, you know you're doing a great job. But if you don't have a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, and you're curious, you can always buy a meter and just take a 24-hour period and check your blood sugars periodically to see, what do I look like when I wake up in the morning? What do I look like 2 hours after I eat? Okay? And then if you feel hypoglycemic in the evenings, check your blood sugar, see where you're at. Yeah. And then my advice for people that are struggling with blood sugar problems or insulin resistance, make sure that you're eating a ton of protein and fat. Think of protein and fat as a slow-burning log that's going to take you from meal to meal, right? And if you're going to eat carbohydrates, pile on the fiber, okay? Fiber will slowly rise your blood sugar, and so that way your blood sugar is not going to spike really high, okay? So fiber, fat, and protein. So when you're thinking of your breakfast right now, what did you guys eat this morning? I can't even remember, right? So think of your breakfast this morning. Everyone that's here today, even online. Did you have a protein in your breakfast? Yes. Did you have a fat? Did you have carbohydrate that was not refined? And maybe you didn't eat breakfast. Think of that too, right? So I want you to think about your own life. This is an experiential class. I want you to kind of take in everything I'm saying and apply it to your life, because that's what's going to be more meaningful for you, okay? It's not just a lecture. It's about taking in this information and really applying it. Did you have a protein the size of a deck of cards, okay? What does that look like on your MyFitnessPal? 20 to 30 grams of fiber, okay? How much fiber did you have? 2 handfuls of something? And how much fat did you have? About a thumbful? So let me give you an example of what I had this morning. I had a protein shake that I made with 2 handfuls of spinach. I had a tablespoon of flax meal, and then I had my scoop of protein powder. Okay? And so you could think of, like, let's say eggs. How many of you guys like eggs for breakfast? Some people. Okay. So you got a couple of eggs. That's going to get some protein in there. That's also maybe even going to get a little fat in there. But you could put a sliver of avocado, right? And you can put some greens like spinach, onions, and tomatoes in your eggs. You got all 3 right there, okay? Doesn't mean that you can't have a slice of toast like Ezekiel toast or rye toast or 9 grain or something like that. You could even do that. So let's say you have a slice of Ezekiel toast. That has protein in it. Most people don't realize it, so I'd encourage you to look for Ezekiel toast. It has protein in it. You may put some guac or avocado on that, and you may put some greens and some tomato on there, okay? So you've got your protein, you've got your fat, and you've got your fiber-rich carbohydrates. Let's say you decide you want to do oatmeal, okay? Same thing, oats, but raw oats, not instant, okay? Because that's just refined, low-fiber food. So you've got your still-cut oats. What else are you going to put on there? Some berries. That's your fiber, right? And maybe you put some walnuts or your almonds on there, and that's your nuts. I mean, your fat. Your nuts, I said. So that's a good breakfast as well. You want a yogurt parfait? Get yourself a Greek yogurt that's plain or vanilla that doesn't have a lot of added sugar to it, because yogurts can do that. And maybe you do the same thing. You put in some nuts or seeds in there, and then you put some frozen berries in there. Yeah? And so think with your meals, am I adding a protein, a fat, and a high fiber carbohydrate in my meal? How do we know what your blood sugar was for the last 90 days? It's magical. No. The life cycle of one red blood cell is 90 days. From the time that a red blood cell is born to the time that the red blood cell dies is 90 days. So we take that red blood cell that's mature, and we measure how much glucose is stuck to it. And then we use that to come up with your hemoglobin A1c. How many people knew that? Yeah, right? Pretty cool. So we're looking at the life cycle of a mature red blood cell to see how much sugar has been floating around in your bloodstream for the last 90 days. And that's where we get that hemoglobin A1c. Ideally, yes,
If your hemoglobin is
high.
14,
Yeah.
does that mean your body has more red blood cells? Therefore, it would have more, whatever you said, stuck to the red blood, glucose stuck to the red
So
blood
it's a really good question. If I actually find the opposite to be true. Sometimes people can have a falsely low hemoglobin A1c because they're anemic. So they've lost blood or they're not making red blood cells, and they may have a really great hemoglobin A1c. So I always look at the hemoglobin first to make sure that the A1c is accurate. Because if it's too low, it might read normal or low for that person. I
And
haven't
if
really
it's too high, does that
go up the other
increase
way.
A1c?
No, it doesn't affect it in that way. Yeah, it's an interesting question though. There are people that have something called polycythemia. They produce too many red blood cells, but I have not seen anything that shows that that would actually cause a falsely elevated hemoglobin A1c. That's a good question though. Good question. So, all right, so hemoglobin A1c, what's normal? 5.5, okay? Under 5.5 is normal. Okay, so you're a rock star if you're under 5.5, okay? 5.5 to 6.5, you're in that no man's land we call pre-diabetes or insulin resistance, okay? You go over 6.5, now you're officially diabetic, okay? So when you check your A1c, pay attention to that. Am I under 6.5? Am I in no man's land? Do I need to keep working on insulin resistance? Or am I under 5.5 and I'm doing all right? If you're running over 7, then your doctor is probably going to want to treat that with prescription medications, and you obviously want to pay attention to how you can bring that down in the latter half of this talk, okay? There's some other things in here. I typically do check a fasting insulin level. Most doctors don't check a fasting insulin level, so be sure and ask for that. A fasting insulin is telling you how many keys your body is making, and the more damaged that lock and key mechanism, the higher the insulin. The higher the insulin, the more cravings and sugar and carb cravings and abdominal fat you're going to develop. So that insulin level is important. If you're a rock star, your insulin is less than 5 when you wake up in the morning. If you're doing all right, it's maybe less than 10. And if you need more work, it's over 15. Okay? Complications. Because all that rotten food outside the condo units starts to ferment, it starts to damage the peripheral organs. It damages your eyes, it damages your brain, it damages your kidneys, your nerves, your heart. So we do want to make sure that if you have diabetes or you have blood sugar problems, you're getting it checked out. And you see the statistics on the slide here. Most people don't know that, but the leading cause of blindness in the United States is actually diabetes. And the leading cause of dialysis in this country is also diabetes. And 8 out of 10 individuals with diabetes die from cardiovascular events. So I can't emphasize the importance, not to scare everyone, but you're here for the right reasons. Daily allowance of sugar in your diet. And folks at home, feel free to unmute if you know the answer. What do I say you should keep your blood sugar under in terms of grams per day? 30. Somebody said something at home. 30, yes, Suzanne. Yes. So it's weird, but the American Heart Association has different recommendations for women and men. Shame on them. So women, it's 30, men, it's 40. So, that's where I tell my patients to try to keep it between 30 and 40. And that's not just for diabetics. That's for just average Americans. You should try to have 30 to 40 grams of sugar a day. Most people ask me, well, how do I know? Well, there are several free apps that you can upload on your phone or your computer. MyFitnessPal, Chronometer. Just track your food that you eat one day and just look at the sugar column and see where you're heading, okay? I was always very shocked. Like, I thought I had a really healthy diet. I would have like fruit in the morning with some yogurt, and I'd eat more plants than anything else. By the end of the day, I'm tallying up. I'm not even at noon and I've already hit my blood sugar, okay? So it was really an eye-opener for me, and I do this for a living. So I want you to, kind of play with this a little bit, okay? So if you're finding that you're getting more than 30 to 40 grams of sugar in your diet, start looking at that as a way of fixing that. What she's observed is that the zero-fat yogurt tends to have more sugar in it. Why do they do that?
Make it taste better.
That's right, to make it taste better. When you strip the fat, you process the product. So things that are zero fat are heavily processed, including zero fat milk. So a lot of people will say, oh, she's talking about whole milk, so I'm guessing the skim milk's just fine. Unfortunately, it's the opposite. When you strip out the fat from the milk, they have to add even more sugar to have it taste better. Now you're just drinking Kool-Aid, which is water and sugar, because all the fat's gone, right? Remember, fat, fiber, and protein slow the rise of blood sugar. Once you strip all that stuff out, all you have left is refined sugar. All right, guys, what do you think? Which one? She's orange juice back there? Everyone said orange juice, Sunny D? What do you think? Anybody else want to chime in at home? Not sure? Okay. All right, so 1 6-ounce container of Yoplait, 26 grams, and 1 cup of Sunny D, 15. What do we think?
Oh, man.
Right?
I knew what I said. I didn't like this milk.
So most people don't even consider yogurt as an unhealthy food, but unfortunately, fruited yogurt, they have to add a lot of added sugar to it. You might as well just have a candy bar at this point, okay, and enjoy it. All right.
That's the whole container.
That's yeah. Yeah. All right, kiddos, what do you think? What has more sugar? A can of Coke? Regular Coke, not diet, right? And a bag of Skittles. Susan says Coke.
What's that, 10-ounce bag?
I guess whatever it says there. It's a 2.17 weight, something ounces. So it's a regular Skittles, like whatever it is. What do you guys think? Not the minis. This is a regular. Coke? Okay, let's take a look. So 1 can of Coke has 39 grams, and 1 bag of Skittles has 47. So a lot of times people will come in and go, I just have candy in my drawer, and I just grab a few handfuls of M&Ms, and I'm good. They don't realize that they're getting this huge spike in blood sugar and insulin, and then they're getting this huge crash, okay? So I bring this stuff up because awareness is the path to success in health. And if you start becoming aware of the fact that the food industry doesn't have your back, and you do need to take an active role in kind of assessing, it doesn't mean you can't have a treat. I have them all the time, but I have to just meter that and decide, okay, am I going to thoroughly enjoy this candy or ice cream or whatever, and eat it really meaningfully and mindfully and enjoy it? Okay, so how many grams of carbohydrates do you average daily?
As
B?
a goal,
Yeah, as a goal.
it says 171.
Oh, you cheater over there. So yeah, I love it. So for my folks that are dealing with sugar problems, they typically stick to about 150. So I say about 50 grams for breakfast, 50 grams for lunch, and 50 grams for dinner. Okay, so make it simple. And the more fiber you eat, you can actually minus the carbohydrates out. Okay, so let's say something is 20 grams of carbohydrates, but it's got like 10 grams of fiber, bless you, then your net carbs is only 10. Okay, so the more, so if you're eating something that has 20 grams of carbohydrates, but it has 10 grams of fiber, you are only getting 10 grams of carbohydrate, bless you. So that's what you are going to count, because fiber is free food. Your body does not absorb fiber. It goes from one end to the other in its complete form, okay? The only thing that fiber feeds is your gut microbiome, the bacteria in your colon. So fiber is important because, one, it fills you up more, bless you. More fiber, fuller you get, okay? The fiber passes right through you, so you can minus that out of your total carbohydrate load, so that's also a plus. And 3, it actually feeds your gut microbiome, so it's actually making you healthier along the way. Getting to what we've been talking about all along, right? If you try to balance your meals, try to have more veggies on your plate, that's the hardest thing for a lot of patients to do, is try to add more veggies. decacards of protein, obviously 15% fiber, and a little bit of fat. So the way this works is 2 handfuls of fiber-rich carbohydrate, which can be vegetables and a fruit if that's what you want, 1 decacards, or the palm of your hand of protein, and a thumb of fat. Okay, so this could be a tablespoon of oil, this could be an avocado slice, it could be a handful of nuts. That's kind of your meal, your plate should look like that. And you can see here that the Mediterranean diet plan, and I don't come up with this just esoterically, there's actually tons of studies to show that people that have diabetes do best when they switch to a Mediterranean meal plan, okay? So this is what a Mediterranean meal plan looks like. You've got, at the bottom of the pyramid is no food, it's actually physical activity and social contact, okay? That's where the base of your lifestyle should be. The second layer up is all this plant fiber, okay? Then is actually fatty fish, according to the Mediterranean diet. Then is poultry, eggs, cheese, and yogurt in moderate amounts of starchy foods weekly. And then even less is that top kind of at the pyramid there is meats and sweets, and even less often sort of wine in moderation. Does that surprise anyone, the Mediterranean diet? Tons of studies on this, tons of studies. All right. So I talked a little bit about this already, but I'm going to talk you through some very specific foods that has science behind it. When you eat fiber in the form of whole grain products, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about brown rice and quinoa and barley and farro, things that have a lot of fiber in them, it actually lowers your blood sugar by slowing the rise of blood sugar and insulin. Okay, so that's a good protein source if you're not eating meat. Fruits and vegetables, low glycemic fruits and vegetables. How many people know about the glycemic index? Anybody watch my video? So the glycemic index is how quickly a food is going to cause your blood sugar to rise. Okay, so you can look that up. Foods that have a low glycemic index under 50 is good for you to eat. Foods that have a glycemic index over 50, it's going to cause your blood sugar to shoot up. White sugar, white bread has a glycemic index of 100, okay? Certain fruits that are still healthy for you, and you should have them in very small portions, things like mangoes, pineapples, watermelon, are kind of in that high zone, okay? White rice has a glycemic index of 78, okay? But other grains like barley has a glycemic index of 28. Okay? So barley actually works like metformin in the body, which is a diabetes medicine. It's interesting that some foods actually act like medication. So barley can actually decrease the liver's output of sugar. So if you're going to have a grain in your plate, maybe choose barley instead of white rice. Okay? Maybe go with wild rice or brown rice or quinoa if you feel like that was working for you better. I never demonize food. There is no bad food on this planet, you know. It's just how it affects our body. And everyone comes with their own unique mind-body vehicle, and our genes and our environment plays a role in how it affects me. For instance, I'll give you an example. I decided I wanted to be like vegetarian and cut out all my meat, and I started eating oatmeal every morning. And I would get the steel-cut oats from Trader Joe's. I would boil it with water, put a little cinnamon on it, stuff it down because I thought it was healthy for me, right? 2 weeks into eating that oatmeal, I was at the garden in Fountain Hills trying to water my bed at lunchtime. My hands looked like sausages. I couldn't even squeeze the hose to water my plants. I had to use my opposite hand to kind of push my hands together to water my plants. And I'm like, what is going on? Why? I'm like trying to eat healthy. I'm eating vegetarian. I'm eating all this whole grain. It wasn't right for me. Okay? And it took about 2 weeks to wash that out, and my joints, you know, are my canary, by the way. That's where I carry my inflammation. And I knew immediately that that was like not right for me. So there's no wrong food. It's just that what triggers your inflammation is different from someone else. And if you have a predisposition for diabetes, as I have, high processed or even whole grains can be really, really inflammatory for me. Interestingly enough, there's studies on whey protein, and there's some evidence that it can improve your post-meal blood sugars. So it works like a DPP-4 inhibitor. Another thing that works like a DPP-4 inhibitor is IV Gourd. which is used in our culture a lot, but you might not know what that IV gourd is. It looks kind of like a long green gourd, but it has medication-like effects as well. We talked about barley, Asian mushrooms. If you like mushrooms in your diet, also show that they can reduce, your sugar levels. And there's IV gourd. I mentioned it just a minute ago. How many people know what bitter melon is? It looks like a spiny cucumber. It's in a lot of Asian food, especially Indian food. We tend to have that. You can make a juice out of it. You're not going to like it too much because it's bitter, but it's super good in terms of lowering your blood sugar. It has insulin-like effects. So a lot of times people will do bitter melon, either juice or pulp, and it can help with their blood sugar. Native Americans here in the area use the pads of prickly pear cactus, and that's a popular remedy to help treat high blood sugar. And then another one that comes from India is gamena, and you can get that as a tea or an encapsulated form, and it also helps with lowering blood sugar. Aloe vera juice a lot of times also can help. So again, there's some dosing studies that suggest about 100 mLs of aloe vera juice 1 to 2, 3 times a day.
That's great.
The screen is off.
Oh, I'm sorry. What? Why is that?
Maybe go back and then go up.
Is
There
it-
you go.
Okay, sorry guys. Thank you for being my sounding board. I don't see it I see my screen just fine, so thank you so much. Berberine, how many people have heard of berberine? That also helps with fasting blood sugar and A1c and cholesterol even. Horehound, another one that's used for cough and mucus, is also widely used in Mexico for diabetes treatments. And again, I'm not saying take all these supplements, all right? I'm not saying that. It should never be a substitution for a healthy diet and lifestyle. But some things that might be new to you. Cinnamon, again, another easy thing to add to your meals, right? So you can definitely do that in powdered form in your meals, can help regulate blood sugar. All right, so there's that. When you go in to see your doctor, some of the other tests that you might want to do is a micronutrient test. Micronutrients tests for deficiencies in minerals and vitamins. Like I said, the lock can get impaired if you don't have key nutrients like chromium, zinc, magnesium. So we want to make sure that that lock is working properly, and getting a micronutrient test can help you determine that. Alpha lipoic acid can help. And then if you suffer from some of these things, again, I'm not recommending that you take supplements. These are simply suggestions based on some of the studies.
What's that, DZ under kidney?
Disease. So
Kidney disease.
Yeah,
Okay.
so kidney disease, diabetic kidney disease. Some studies suggest that vitamin B1 can help with that, astragalus can help with that. If you get a micronutrient test and you find that you're B12 deficient, zinc deficient, B1 or B6 deficient, you can either ask your doctor for a list of foods that can increase those nutrients, or ask for a recommendation for a supplement that can help get your levels up. Okay, so eat mindfully, eat peacefully, eat with love. Pay attention to the signs, the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touch of your food. Try to eat slowly. It takes 15 minutes for the hormones in your stomach, the stretch receptors, to communicate with your brain that you're full. Okay, so if you're distracted while you're eating, you're not allowing that communication to happen. And if you eat rapidly, you're, one, not digesting anything, but two, you're not giving your body time to register that food has entered the body and you're sufficiently satisfied. Okay? So 15 minutes. Use your non-dominant hand. That way you're not just going into autopilot with your meal. Right? Sometimes we just, it's like driving somewhere that you drive to every day. All of a sudden you forget you're even driving. We do that with food. We're driving it right in. So use your non-dominant hand. And then maybe even pause between bites and chew your food thoroughly. I tell people this, I'm like, spit it out. If it doesn't look like baby food, put it back in and chew some more, okay? Because that's how your food should be before it hits the stomach. If you're not digesting, that's also gonna be a problem. All right, so there are some other things that I talk about with cortisol, because remember I said stress can actually drive up your blood sugar. So breath work, breathing in for 4, holding your breath for 7, opening your mouth and exhaling out for 8. Okay, let's do it together. Take a deep breath in. Hold. Exhale out. Okay. Do that as much as you want. That's how you calm the nervous system down, because your breath stimulates the vagus nerve and takes you out of fight or flight. Okay? If you're already like busy in your mind, take a moment to just sit and gaze at nature for 2 to 3 minutes. Maybe even listen to nature, birds chirping, wind blowing, traffic going by. Using your senses brings you out of fight or flight and in the present situation. Okay? Maybe talk to a loved one and make eye contact without interruption or judgment. Hard to do, right?
Very hard.
And just mindfully listen without jumping in or without your mind sort of going to another task, waiting for them to finish talking so you can leave, right? Focusing on your listening skills, like select a song and just listen to it. And then 5 things that you appreciate about your day at the end of the day, or even people that go unappreciated. Our brain is programmed to focus on the negative because it's programmed for survival. So you're more likely to remember negative events 10 times more than positive events. We're just programmed that way. So to break that old programming, make yourself think of those 5 people or 5 things that happened that weren't so bad today. That's going to take you out of fight or flight. I didn't mention exercise, but I am going to mention that. Exercise is a huge component when it comes to sugar, metabolism, and overall health. It's a grade A recommendation. Why does using your muscles control your blood sugar? Because it drives the sugar into the muscles for energy. And so if after a meal you take 5-10 minutes to go walk around the block, you're going to notice that your blood sugar is a lot lower when you do postprandial or post-meal exercise. So if you want to do that experiment, eat your meal, check your blood sugar 2 hours later. The next time, eat your meal, go for a walk, and then check your blood sugar 2 hours later. You'll notice a huge shift in your blood sugar because using your muscles increases the entry of sugar into the bloodstream, into the cell. Okay, so muscles are really important. Next month, we're going to talk about how to improve muscle mass and metabolism, so don't miss that class. And then I didn't mention sleep, but I definitely think that if you're not sleeping well, if you have obstructive sleep apnea, if you toss and turn at night, if you're not getting a good night's rest, studies show that that too leads to insulin resistance, okay? Because it leads to inflammation, it leads to high stress states, and that both together causes the lock and key not to work. So if you suffer from fatigue in the morning, you don't feel rested, you feel like you've been tossing and turning all night, you have monkey mind throughout the evening, you're never feeling like you're in a restful state, that in itself can cause your blood sugar. So if you charge your phone the next morning, you expect it to be 100%, right? Okay, what if you could do that with your body and check your body battery the next morning and say, only 66%, right? I did that experiment, and I know my husband's online and he doesn't care, but I got him an Oura Ring, and he has a bad habit of keeping the phone, with him in bed, okay? There's a light flashing on the outside of the bed. He's checking his phone. Anyway, the next morning, I know, right? I'm just calling him out. So the next morning, his body battery was in the 60s, okay? We did an experiment, and we put his phone in the kitchen, where my phone lives, and his body battery is over 80. So it's an interesting experiment that the things that we sabotage our own sleep with can potentially be causing us to have insulin resistance, weight problems, fatigue, chronic disease.
And he didn't worry about what was going on in the kitchen?
What was going on in the kitchen?
His phone.
Oh, okay. I don't know, but
But it showed.
But it made a better sleep quality, right? By just removing that sort of external device, whether it's the EMF or whether it was the constant being vigilant about what's happening with the phone or notifications or this need to want to check. The whole FOMO part of our culture, fear of missing out, keeps us attached to our devices. We constantly want to see who texted us, who didn't, who commented, who didn't, what's going on in the world, what's the next thing I need to do. So the constant distraction keeps our brain in fight or flight. And if an hour before bed, we don't decompress, we go to bed with that still sort of buzzing around in our head, right? Yeah.
What ring was that?
An aura ring. O-U-R-A. Was that the same question you had, Barb? Okay.
Where do you get it?
Online. Well, they have their own website. Yeah.
Or the other devices?
So Aura is a ring, looks like a wedding band. The other one is a Whoop band, W-H-O-O-P. Obviously Fitbit's another brand of that. You've got your Apple Watch or Samsung Watch. Those kinds of watches are available as well.
That Samsung watch really does tell you. I have it.
You like it, right?
Yes. I don't like what it says.
Yeah.
The fact that it says it.
Yeah, I did a tiny experiment last month. I have a company that is a startup, and they offered me a 30-day trial where my patients can then hook up their devices so that I could see all of them like in a dashboard. And I know, right? So it's like Big Brother's watching, right? So I can see, like, if people were hooked up to the app, I could see on a day-to-day basis how much do they sleep, how many steps do they take, what's their heart rate variability, what was their, body battery the next day. Yeah. So I would text my husband in the middle of the day. I'm like, "You're not moving." He wasn't very happy that I was using him as an experiment, but that kind of tracking for yourself can be helpful. Like you could see, okay, I didn't walk enough, I didn't sleep enough, my sleep scores were poor, and you can even track your food on their device, like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer. I didn't drink enough water. There's also a stress monitor. It's called heart rate variability. And your HRV correlates with cardiovascular health. And when you're highly stressed, your HRV is below 40, okay? So if you're always under 40 with your HRV, that's correlating in lots of medical studies with increased risk for cardiovascular illness, MI, stroke, and death with all causes. So I look at the HRV as a monitor for how stressed the body is and how stuck it is in fight or flight, okay? I know we've gone over, so I am so sorry. But I hope that this was helpful. Thank you all for being so patient and listening. And thanks for you guys for checking in at home. Does any